Hell yeah. Halford and Brough is back almost to its full capacity. The past few weeks of Hal and Bro have been kind of interesting. There have been rotating hosts and different guys taking up the mantle of one of Sportsnet 650's most prominent shows. Obviously, these guys were on TSN 1040 together. They have a very long tenured time in this market. And you had the Friday update featuring Rick Dhaliwal, who is finally back on the program and giving us fans listening to this show the latest on the Vancouver Canucks. Today we're going over on the Canucks News Summaries, who recapped Rick Dhaliwal's return to Halford and Brough on Fridays. So, big, fat, sloppy, twisted thank you and shout out over to Canucks News Summaries, as always, for providing the scoop and the summaries as to what it is being talked about. This has been this guy's job on Twitter for the past year. I remember when they started making these Canucks summaries and we were all like, wow, this is really good. Like, it's very helpful for the community to have this stuff. And for us on YouTube, it gives us a very good opportunity to look at what is being said and to look at it all on YouTube without actually having to screenshot everything. So Rick Dhaliwal's hit on 650 summarized. Shout out to Canucks News Summaries. Let's dive into the Canucks and what Dhaliwal says about this team. There is a lot to dive into here. Literally 3 screenshot-worthy pictures of information and commentary, but I wanted to focus mostly on the first one because some of the stuff that's discussed over here is really interesting. We have the Vancouver Canucks roster assembled as it is. There's an update on the Canucks and their trade stipulations and how that's been going. So I wanted to focus more on this. We can dive into some of the other stuff a little bit later if you all wanted to do that, but this is the main meat and potatoes in regards to Vancouver. So let's dive into it here. There shouldn't be any chemistry issues heading into next season, given the lack of off-season moves. Health is going to be huge with the Vancouver Canucks because the depth of this team is not great. Yes, and yes, absolutely is the case here. The Vancouver Canucks are essentially the same team from last year to this year, except no more Pius Suter and no more Dakota Joshua. Instead, you've got Evander Kane on there, and everybody else is just slotting up one spot. Filipino, Atiratu, and Teddy Bluger are your projected second, third, and fourth centers, but more on that later. The biggest challenge will be adjusting to new coaches for the Vancouver Canucks. Thatcher Demko had a good season of off-season training, and Dhaliwal says he hasn't heard of any setbacks for Thatcher the Snatcher. The condensed schedule is going to be due to the Olympics. There is no reason to overplay Thatcher Demko now. 45 to 50 games for Thatcher the Snatcher is ideal, and that, of course, is an opportunistic scenario for Demko to fully reclaim his spot as the number 1 starter in Vancouver. The most recent season's worth of play saw him play only 23 games, and he had an .889 save percentage. This, by all accounts, was the worst year that Demko has ever had as a Vancouver Canuck. The season before, he was a Vezina finalist in 51 games. Now, the Vancouver Canucks have very capable backup goaltending in Kevin Lankinen, so there should be no reason for Adam Foote and Vancouver to overplay Thatcher, rely on him on way too many games, and inevitably risk him getting hurt again. Villander is the next topic over here for Rick Dhaliwal. He's a high-character kid, and he's very committed to the defensive side of the game. His dad is a top skills coach, and it'll be interesting to see where he fits into the puzzle. There is an update from Dhaliwal in regards to the Vancouver Canucks and their second-line center search. The price for Mason McTavish is out of this world. So, yeah, maybe there's an offer sheet, but a trade does not seem likely. There's a conversation here about Marco Rossi. One source told Dhaliwal that the Vancouver Canucks never came close to acquiring Marco Rossi. It's overblown by the media. Teams are offering draft picks, and the Wild, they wanted young players. Dhaliwal also said that he heard the Canucks were working the phones hard in mid-August, but there were no dance partners. Dhaliwal says he thinks the Canucks were frustrated, and they wanted to make a trade. That is pretty insightful stuff here to go over in regards to the Canucks. Obviously, there's a lot here. Like, we can dive into everything, but I really wanted to focus on that, essentially. The second line center argument and how Vancouver was in a spot to wanting to improve their forward core, so much so that they were working the phones. Now, obviously, I'm not going to say that it's surprising that they were making trade calls and that they were trying to grab whomever it was on the market to improve this 1, 2, 3, 4 center core down the middle. But it is intriguing to me, Dhaliwal's assessment that apparently the Canucks might have been frustrated. His thoughts are that this team really wanted to do something, but guys just were not available. Out of the guys that are available, I mean, we're hearing some of the same names. Nazem Kadri was there. Mason McTavish is still going to be there, but his price is very, very high. You've got Casey Middlestad in Boston, Pavel Zacha in Boston. Not saying that these guys cannot be fits, but if you're just not able to find the right trade, then no team is going to bite on it. The Marco Rossi update is interesting because we've been hearing about this the entire time, how Vancouver offered the 15th overall pick. They were willing to sacrifice that draft selection that they used to select Braden Coots and maybe even a few other picks to get Marco Rossi, but Minnesota didn't want that. They didn't want draft picks. They wanted guys that can help their team now. And it just boils into what is the current status quo of the NHL, where nobody is really a seller. You have Vancouver that is like on the outside looking in of the playoff picture. This roster assembled essentially got the team to barely outside the playoff race. They were, 6 points out of the final wild card? If the Vancouver Canucks just got some more overtime wins, things could have been different. But this team is essentially the team that got them there. Spare Pia Suter and JT Miller, Dakota Joshua, and add on Evander Kane and some other younger dudes like Sasson and Ratu. The Vancouver Canucks are going to need the best out of everybody. Jake DeBrusk needs to get to 30-goal form. Pettersson ideally would like to be at 90-plus point form. If Besser can get 30 goals, if Evander Kane can get 20, if Garland can get 20, if Sherwood can get 15, Höglander gets 15, and the defense does as well as they can, then that's like 2/3 of the puzzle right there. Maybe it's 5/6 of the puzzle. You need Demko and Lankinen to also be as good as they can be. It's just other teams around the NHL also feel the same way. Hey, our guys are really close. We're just on the outside looking in. Minnesota is one of those teams. They weren't willing to go full draft pick. And so Vancouver getting frustrated, wanting to make a trade, but they can't because there are no dance partners. That is interesting. Speaking about that Kiefer Sherwood, there's some commentary that Dhaliwal has here on him. The fact that Sherwood is changing his agents as his UFA year is approaching, that's very interesting. Before changing agents, contract talks between the two sides were quiet and slow. There wasn't much engagement. With the agent change, however, contract talks may pick up. Dhaliwal says he can see a 5 or 6 year contract at a $5 million cap hit if Sherwood has another great season, and he also mentioned something maybe in the $4 million range. Now, I'll say this right here. Kiefer Sherwood, if he is able to continuously do what he did the most recent campaign, which was score goals like crazy, hit guys like crazy, and be one of the most valuable fantasy pickups in the NHL, 40 points in 78 games, that's crazy. This is a really, really talented hockey player who had a shot out of a cannon type of season. If he's able to do that for the next whatever many years, like, okay, be my guest. But he's 30 years old right now, and the next contract that he's got, it's going to start in 2026, 2027, so he'll be 31. If he gets a 5-year contract that takes him till he's 36 years old, that's a lot of money, man. Not saying that Kiefer Sherwood won't age well into whatever contract he gets, but how many guys at 35 years old play a pure physical grinding role and still are effective? I question the longevity of Sherwood based off of how good he was this most recent season, but I digress. This guy had his best NHL campaign at 30 years old after being a very good AHL producer, but now he's probably in a spot to maybe get more. And we're sitting here thinking, what are the potential options? I want you to let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. How do you feel about all these Vancouver Canucks news and updates in regards to McTavish, Rossi, Sherwood, Vancouver's trade discretion over here? How do you feel about it all? Let me know in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.